This is Holly Page with this week's special edition of No Labels Talks, and I am delighted to be joined by Marianne Martini.
Hello, everyone. It's so great to be on the other side of the camera.
Now we can harass
Oh,
Brian Clancy like he always does you.
I know. What should we say about him?
I don't know, but while we think about that, Marianne, what a year it has been. The
That
ups,
it
the
has.
downs. What stands out for you in this past year?
It's been a true roller coaster, Holly Page. We've been working this week on our end of year emails and doing a little bit of reflecting, and it's crazy to think all that we've jammed into this year, even as an organization.
Exactly. Lucky for us, though, we are ending on a high note. And that is on December 12th, we convened our organization's national meeting in Washington, D.C. We were joined by, I don't know, 20 members of the House and Senate, both Democrats and Republicans. And I think we really helped set the tone for the future, the role No Labels will play in supporting, rewarding, encouraging the politics of problem solving and the members who are brave enough to do it. I just thought it was a terrific meeting and a great way for us to end the year.
I agree. And it really, I think it set the scene for everything that has to be accomplished in this next year, but also the spirit of cooperation that is also going to be necessary in order for this next Congress to be successful and really do what they were elected for this past November.
No doubt about it. Everyone is trying to read the tea leaves and understand what is next for Washington and the country and our politics. And I do think that this greatest hits from that conference that you and your team have put together is a perfect piece of that puzzle to help people understand where some agendas and intentions lie, and where the folks who show up to the Capitol every day who really want to make their communities and the country better, what they're thinking. So with that, we welcome you to listen to the 30-minute summary, really, of what was an incredible conference, and welcome your thoughts and comments.
Yes, please enjoy and comment and let us know who you'd like us to have next time.
There is opportunity to actually get stuff done if you're willing to work on it. All of these people on this stage are willing to do that and do it effectively. So I think the key is to continue to find the area of opportunity, to find the area of agreement, not focus on the area of disagreement, and not demand absolutism. Find the area of agreement, the 9 out of 12 that you can agree on.
Those of us who are disappointed in the election results in November, I've had to say there's a universe of the disappointed, but there's a subset of the disappointed who aren't just disappointed. They are afraid. Am I going to be deported? Am I going to lose my health care? Am I going to be prosecuted because I was a member of the January 6th committee in the House? The disappointed is a big group, but there's a subset that are truly afraid, and the disappointed have to stand up for the afraid. And that is the other thing that I believe very, very strongly. And you know, Andy, this is a hard one because compromise is a good word, not a bad word. And yet you can't there's some things you can't compromise on. There's some things where you can't split the middle, split the difference between good and bad and truth and fiction. So every day, I think in the Senate, we're going to be walking in like, where can we advance today, and what do we have to stand up against?
You know, but I'll work with anybody. Like, I don't need an ideological purity test to serve my community. Like, if we're aligned on, you know, Darrell Ice has been great with me on right to repair. Fulcher on some wildfire issues. So I think that in a lot of cases, it's not about, it's like, do they live in the same world as me? Like, do your kids, you know, your kids going to public school? Like, are you in a rural community? Like,
sure.
What do you, I mean, I talk to people about what they drive.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you, this message you've been stressing since the election, I mean, on your side of the aisle, about the need for Democrats to just get back to understanding and responding to the needs of real people. Do you feel like that's resonating? Like, what I'm curious is, do you have a lot of people coming up to you saying, you're right, keep going? Or do you feel like you're getting a lot of pushback?
I think, you get the answer to the question that you ask. And I think a lot of people have been asking the wrong questions. On this media, all this media lately, it's like they want a 10-step program to get power. And I'm like, people who want power aren't really the ones who should have it.
This immigration issue is going to be very, very complex. There are those that view legal immigration no different than illegal immigration. They try to mix the two. They try to say, now's the opportunity for us to do away with legal immigration. And then there are those that view illegal immigration no different than legal immigration. And they try to mix the two. Guess what? They're both wrong. Illegal immigration is bad, and we should prevent bad actors from coming into our country. We should be safe in our own communities. We should know who these people are, why they're here. Legal immigration is what our country is founded upon. And we need those to come and live the American dream and help better our lives and transition, do all these things. So there is a lot at stake. I go back to being the man in the arena. Many times people know what's right. As a member, you know what's the right thing to do, but it is politically very difficult. Why? Because with going against the grain comes challenges. It's much more easy to hit the easy button. But when you have support, both inside and outside, you're on the right track. When you feel as if you're not alone, you can tackle the most toughest issues.
For far too long, I think we in the Democratic Party, not everyone, but many in the party, saw border security as a Republican right-wing position, and we have to disabuse ourselves of that notion. One of my favorite quotes comes from Fiorello LaGuardia, who said there's no Democratic or Republican way to take out the trash. No one sees sanitation as a left-wing or right-wing position. We simply see it as something government does. And I think we have to see border security and public safety not as a right-wing or left-wing position, but simply as something government does, as a core function of government. So I feel like there has to be a fundamental rethinking of the Democratic Party's position on border security, or else we're going to continue losing elections.
We are one Congress, two chambers, and it is vastly different. The process that you have to go through, the rules, the debates, the mindset, the personalities, they are extremely different. And to marry those two is a whole nother process. But one thing you have to realize is that's what our founding fathers wanted it to be. If you go back and if you actually read the Federalist Papers, you'll understand they wanted Congress to be dysfunctional. So when people say, why don't you all get along? It was never designed for us to get along. It was designed for it to be a thoughtful process and heavily debated so it couldn't move as fast as it moves sometimes. And it doesn't move through legislation fast, it moves through executive orders fast. And that is a huge problem because when it moves that fast, it creates destabilization throughout the economy, throughout the country, throughout foreign policy, because it changes too quick. And we have to get back to actually allowing Congress to make the legislation.
I spent a lot of time on energy and climate. I'm just telling you, permitting reform, permitting reform, permitting reform. It'd be hard to find an issue that would impact inflation as much as permitting reform, that has the potential to help us with our debt as much as permitting reform, that has as much to do with energy dominance as permitting reform. I mean, there's a lot of things. Sometimes we just think of a single category when you talk about energy. But I'm telling you, out throughout our whole economy, if we can figure out permitting reform, which is a very good bipartisan issue, and right now some of the best minds, both in the House and the Senate, are working 24/7 and seeing if they can get something across the line. And I'm really excited about what's happening there and feel like this is really good for our country.
I don't think I've made any secret of the fact that I'm more of a Ronald Reagan Republican than I am a Trump Republican. And some would say, well, you're not really a Republican at all. And I said, you can call me whatever you want to call me. I'm not attached to a label. I'd rather be that no label. I'd rather be that person that is just known for trying to do right by the state and the people that I serve, regardless of party. And I'm totally good and comfortable with that. In fact, I think I am more comfortable with that identity than an identity as a Republican, as a party person.
Well, actually, I'm optimistic, and I see in this administration an opportunity to pass a lot of policy proposals that we couldn't get under a Democratic administration. And I say that representing a district that's on the border. I think there's a lot more that we could do on border policies that would have a meaningful impact in addressing long-term issues that we've been dealing with for a long time. I think energy is another issue that we can work together. And I have a lot of oil and gas and LNG terminals in my district, and I think that there's a lot of policies that we can work together with a Republican administration. So we got to look at the good side of every situation we're in. And I didn't come from a political background, so when I got here, I thought we were going to be closer together than we have been the last 8 years. But I look for every opportunity to sit with folks across the aisle and work on policies that make sense to everyone, and there's a lot of it.
We have to continue to look at ways to work together, bring power to the middle. And the reason that is so important, because at the end of the day, as we are in the 118th, we're going to still see, even in the current trifecta, close margins. And we have to be able to work together. And what I would say, there's only one or two scenarios. The one scenario is you try to whip everybody and threaten to primary everybody across the nation, or you try to work together. I think the most pragmatic, practical option here is working together.
Both parties have a growing populist isolationism streak that manifests itself in trade, how they view Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and frankly, how they view immigration as well. It's going to be critically important that groups like this, in a bicameral, bipartisan way, understand that some of these things make sense. Listen, do we need to recalibrate the economic relationship between China and the United States of America? Absolutely we do. So it's not that we need to reject the whole idea of reform. It is that I think if we get caught up in some sort of populist rage, that we will be driven by xenophobia or industrial policy or protectionism or isolationism, and our country is there periodically, we could make all of us a whole lot less safe and a whole lot poorer in a hurry. And I think one thing that we can do is have a real thoughtful conversation about what do these trading relationships need to look like, what does aid to other countries look like, what is America's role in the world, and I have to tell you, the most thoughtful thinkers in those areas are involved in these no labels, problem solvers caucus type efforts. This is generational type impact we can have.
I think everybody up here, more or less, we're either friends or very friendly. I mean, Jimmy Panetta and I have traveled together. Vicente has invited me down to the border. Susie, we've traveled as well on Codels. Ed and I have known each other since he's come in from Hawaii. Don and I are always fist bumping and chatting whenever we can. So there's a lot of respect among members. There really is, and I think we got to be more focused on results as opposed to the politics that gets in between. Sometimes I say jokingly, I wish it wasn't such a joke, politics should be banned on the House floor. It should be banned between 9 and 5. Right? And hopefully over the next year, before we enter into another election year, we can really be focused on results. And again, the respect has to come in there. No one's ever 100% right? Ask my wife.
This is exactly why I decided to run, to bring a new generation of leadership, to bring a pragmatic, common sense solution to some of the world's most challenging problems. Obviously, we have 2 ears here and 1 mouth. We're excited to get to work in January. It can't come soon enough. Idle hands are the devil's workshop here. But at the end of the day, I'm just really excited to learn and get to work and really bring pragmatic solutions to, like I said, some of the most challenging problems.
And I think all the folks up here share the, and you too, share the same frustration that in this world it is taken as a given, and that it is played as a given, and that it really plays to the extremes of both parties. And frankly, I don't think that's the way the country actually thinks about it. I don't think that's the way my constituents, and by the way, I won by 72%, so I'm going to do them one better. And there's a lesson in that, because the point I'm getting to is that I think the country values this work. I think the country values problem solving. I think the country will forgive you a vote that's not entirely aligned with what they think, if they believe that you were really trying to come up with a solution to a problem. I know darn well, for example, that one of the major areas that we're all facing next year, which we should have faced a long time ago, is immigration. Okay, everybody up here is ready for some kind of a consensus immigration reform bill. And I know darn well that my constituents, some of them that are going to vote for me and have voted for me, aren't going to like some of the things of that immigration bill, but I think they are going to value the fact that we worked through that.
So now's the time to work together to demonstrate to the American people that our parties and our elected representatives are connected to their needs and offering concrete solutions to real challenges they're facing. We will address, I believe, the economic challenges facing families across the country. We will, in the end the disastrous open border policies we've seen in recent years because the American people want us to. We will reestablish American military deterrence because, here again, there's an incentive, a political incentive for us to do so, in addition to it being the right thing to do. And there's much more to be done. Boosting energy independence comes to mind. Pulling back some of the regulatory policies that have constrained growth and unduly constrained freedom, economic and otherwise. Making our economy more resilient, something I've been actively involved in, particularly through the CHIPS and Science Act semiconductor initiative.
I don't have to be bipartisan, but I know in order to get stuff done, you need to be bipartisan. And I think what we've seen and what I try to express to my blue constituency is it's about doing our damn job. And as much as they're disappointed in my not having outrage that they want me to show, they respect the fact that I'm actually getting stuff done. They respect the fact that I'm part of problem solvers. They respect the fact that I have relationships with members across the aisle. And I got to tell you, when people ask me, how do you deal with the craziness of Washington, D.C., first and foremost, I tell them, look, man, I've already had 4 years of Trump. I've been through 2 impeachments. I've been through 2 government shutdowns. I've had 1 global pandemic. I've had 1 global bout of inflation. I've been redistricted where I had 55% new voters. I had floods and fires and where FEMA had to come into my district, and so on and so forth. This is what we deal with. But what keeps me grounded and what I tell my staff and what I tell my constituents is just what I told all of you. It's about getting stuff done.
I came here to Congress by beating an 18-year incumbent in a primary, but I did it by running to the center. I said that he was too partisan. That's why he wasn't effective. He had only passed 1 bill in 18 years, and we can do better if we're willing to work across the aisle. That might sound like a quaint notion, but I won a Massachusetts Democratic primary about 10 years ago with that message. The second point I would like to make is that I had no interest in politics whatsoever when I got into politics. This is not what I expected to do with my life. As I mentioned, I'd studied physics in college. For everyone in life who sees my resume and not my transcript, that makes me sound very smart. But the reason I'm here is because I did 4 tours in the infantry in Iraq. And as a Marine officer, I had the opportunity to serve with amazing Americans from all over this country. And we all came together with different religious backgrounds, different political beliefs from all different states of the Union. And yet we were able to set aside those differences to do what's best for America. Isn't that what you should expect of Congress?
You know, I think that for Democrats coming into this Congress, especially with the Senate and the White House being Republican as well, that we really need to be disciplined, and I think it is the problem solvers and people in the middle to not always have a knee-jerk reaction. That, you know, any move that Trump makes, to not always be, we're going to oppose it because it came from him. And, you know, we just had a vote this morning on the Judges Act, which was to, this passed the Senate unanimously. It came to the House to...
I want to thank No Labels and my friend Pat McCrory, who I think is probably in the room right now, for a very important work that you're doing. And I think if I were going to sum up the greatest value that an organization like No Labels can provide, it's reinforcement for those who demonstrate courage on Capitol Hill. We do, I think that I was thinking this morning when I was anticipating speaking with you all today, and I've heard so many people say, well, we just don't have the courage in Congress that we did back in the day, you know, pick your favorite period. I don't think that that's true. I think what we have now is, I wonder, for example, what we would be saying if we had 24-hour news coverage, social media, digital ads, micro-targeting, crowdsourcing of protests. If we had those back in the 80s, would those folks look any more courageous than our folks today? And I think the answer is no.
I just want to thank all of you for your activism and participation with No Labels. It can, when you're in the center and trying to work with both sides, the corollary of that is you get hit hard by the far left and the far right. I just learned that Heritage Action is going to start running ads to try to pressure me, which never works, so I don't know why they bother. But they're starting ads in Maine this weekend. And, you know, it's hard not to let that make you weary when you are working so hard and trying to do what you think is right for your state and for America. Mm-hmm. And having the support of an organization like No Labels, having No Labels there for us matters. It makes a huge difference, because what you have are the groups on the far left and the far right who demand 100% compliance, that's the word, 100% compliance with 100% of their views, 100% of the time. I'm never going to be like that, ever. And the problem is... That's why we like you. The problem is you need support. You need help in telling your story and in showing people that you are in fact doing the right thing. But it's a difficult environment, particularly with social media these days. Absolutely. My staff just tells me, do not read your Twitter comments. But again, thank you so much for all that you do. You are making a difference. You're bringing us together, House and Senate. That's a major accomplishment in and of itself, Democrats and Republicans. And please keep up your great work.
We can't keep talking and listening only to those we agree with. It's only when the partisan shouting stops that we can actually hear each other's voices and concerns. And we need to stop dismissing or even hating those we disagree with. We've got to find that middle ground where we can all come together. Now, the majority of Americans believe that our country is way off track. But they don't just blame one party. They're fed up with the divisiveness and dysfunction in politics, and they're fed up with the extremes of both parties. Most Americans are thoroughly convinced that we're hopelessly divided, that Washington is completely dysfunctional, and that our entire political system is fundamentally broken. But just down the road from here, in Annapolis, over the past 10 years, we have shown a better path forward. The lessons that we learn from those efforts are clear. Successful politics is about addition and multiplication. It's not about subtraction and division, and both parties have been doing a lot more subtracting and dividing lately. Durable solutions don't come from ramming through policies on party line votes. They come from honest negotiations, compromise, and a shared sense of responsibility to serve the people. No one of us has all the power or all the answers, and history has shown that the most significant and enduring accomplishments are achieved when we work together. And I truly believe that it is in searching for common ground that we find the true strength of our democracy. When we listen to each other, when we come to the table with respect, civility, and a willingness to compromise, we can build solutions and coalitions that stand the test of time.
I think there are plenty of places where we can find common ground here, and what we've always done in the Problem Solvers Caucus, listen, under when it was Trump's first term, whether it's under during the Biden administration, we look for the places where we can find 80% solutions and put the country first, and we get together and we get them done. And I think that's the same recipe we should use going forward. There's going to be plenty of places where we can work together, as you're hearing about right here, right? Plenty of places, and that's where we should sit together. You're always going to have people on both sides who are focused more on throwing tacks in the road than on getting stuff done. That's always been the way our country's been. It'll always be the same way. Mark was talking about social media. You're always going to have a lot of loud people who are not there to govern, but are there to either be social media stars or to obstruct. That's going to happen, right? And we should expect it. The question is, are there enough people who could sit in the room and get stuff done? And listen, I'm going to be the first one, I'm sure Richie will too, if we disagree with something, or if it's bad for Jersey, I'm going to speak out against it. If it's good for the country and good for the people I represent, I'm going to support it and call balls and strikes. That's what you're supposed to do as a legislator. And I'm sure Mark Wayne will do the same thing, Dusty will, for their states they represent. And so I think that's how we should approach it, but the will is here to govern and get stuff done. And we got to look at this opportunity to do that. And that's what I'm excited about. Like, you've got great people who are willing to do it, and now we just got to take advantage of this moment. And listen, the fact that you all have been so supportive of people who get in the room together and are willing to do this and have the courage to do this, I think we got to make sure we keep supporting that and not run off to our respective corners.
There's a threat behind the threat, and that's what I want to address today. We have these threats, but we can't address it because we're running a $2.4 trillion deficit annually. We have a $35 trillion debt. The interest payments exceed what we're spending on defense today for the first time ever. And it's unacceptable. If you look at the mandatory spending, it's 72% of our budget, 28% is discretionary, and half of that discretionary budget is defense. And so we're being choked right now on our discretionary spending. We have to get statesmen to stand up and say we got to deal with the mandatory spending. I was listening to a senator last night, and I agree with him. The president and both parties should come together and figure out how we're going to solve this. It is not happening. I've told senators and fellow members of Congress of both parties, it is time to do a debt commission, half Republican, half Democrat. Come up with a proposal how to balance the budget, how to save Social Security. We have 2 people working for every retiree. It's not working right now. It's going to go insolvent in 2033. Let's solve this problem. And we've done these debt commissions in the past before, but this one should have a mechanism that says whatever proposals we have, we're going to put it on the floor for an up or down vote with no amendments. The last one we did not have that, and the Speaker would not put it on the floor. So I'm here to say today that we need some statesmen, and they're in this room, that's going to come together and solve this debt crisis so America can be the indispensable power in the world and still be the world's best hope.
Now, I don't want to say that our common sense majority guarantees an easy return or an easy path ahead to sanity, good governance, and a healthy civic culture. If it did, we wouldn't even have to be here. No labels wouldn't have to exist. We're up against some pretty charismatic ideologues. We face entrenched, motivated actors in our civic culture, our politics, and our economy. Many of them have a real self-interest in division or an aversion to necessary change that would undermine the status quo that gives them a lot of attention and power. Unfortunately, they get rewarded for that type of behavior, right? It sells in the media, sells on social media. It's a good way, in the eyes of many, to raise a lot of money. But this reality remains. The majority of people reject the kind of knee-jerk partisanship that says if the so-called other side supports a position or a policy, it's got to be a bad idea. It's got to be opposed. They see pluses and minuses in both major parties, is the truth. That's how I feel about it. I tell people all the time, I am rooting for the success of the GOP. You cannot have a democracy with single-party rule. I want the very best of their party to rise up to the top, as I want the very best of mine as well.
On the House members, no labels. Nancy Jacobson, thank you, be still my heart. You're the one who set up all the meetings right now with the people on the House side that we're working with. We're briefing them, we're bringing them on board, and we'll pick out that. We've had people last time. We had people last time. I won't say their names this time until they formally commit to be public, but we have bipartisan people who are very interested